Welcome. French Revolution and accession of Victoria are two important events for world. In between these two events, several important smaller event and book publication took place. These events and books define not only the history but the line and length of literature. Many of these events or books frequently asked in UGC exam. The mistake of students is that while reading the time period between these two years, French Revolution and Victoria's accession, they ignored several things. Most of the students focus on the writings of William Blake, Wordsworth, Coleridge, Southey, Keats, and others. But there are several things they ignored. Mary Wollstonecraft is the first. Second one is Charles and Mary Lamb, and that is Mary Shelley, Thomas Paine, Edmund Burke. These are few writers which often ignored. Along with it, few events like some of French Revolution. Later on, we are having ban on slavery and reform acts. These few things are often ignored. In this lecture, we are going to talk about these things. First is French Revolution. We mostly are aware about French Revolution, but there are things that we ignored. And the first thing is the year when the French Revolution took place, 1789. Who was victorious in that? Who was the losers? Why it took place? From which ideology it was inspired? For example, Rousseau's equality, fraternity and brotherhood. There are several other questions which we never have a chance to look upon. So the best thing is that we have to check these events if we are willing to score good marks in UGC net. The very first text that we have to look upon is Edmund Burke's Reflection on the French Revolution. It published in the year 1790. This is the groundbreaking text, and this text is the thing against which we are having Thomas Paine's Rights of Man, as well as and both these two texts, either it is Reflection on the French Revolution and Edmund Burke's Right of Man, these define the political scenario of thing. And here, in response of these two texts of Thomas Paine and Edmund Burke, we have another groundbreaking text, that is of Mary Wollstonecraft, A Vindication of the Rights of Women. These texts are more important, especially Mary Wollstonecraft's text value is double because it became the first text about the rights of women. Similarly, when we are reading Mary Wollstonecraft, we again ignore several things. We know the title, A Vindication of the Rights of Women, but in which year it published? 1792. We never have a chance to look upon it, and several times this question is asked in UGC exam, sometime in chronology, sometime as a direct question, or sometime you are given text name, A Vindication of Right of Women, who wrote it, and sometime there is name of author and there are text which is by Mary Shelley. In that sense, it is. Sometime it is also having a subtitle. When we are reading Mary Wollstonecraft, we never have a chance to look upon its subtitle. Its subtitle is A Vindication of the Right of Women with strictures on political and moral subjects. More importantly, this chapter or this book is having 13 chapters. This is the thing we often ignored. We focus more on whether it is feminist text or harbinger of other important questions for women and so on, but we rarely have a chance to look upon how many chapters this work has, and answer is 13 chapters. And these things make it important. We have to look upon it. And second, we also have to check Thomas Paine's Right of Man. It speak about moral, political and other things that are related to man, and against it we are having Mary Wollstonecraft text, and hence these are equivalent or contemporary to one another, although it is another matter that Thomas Paine came with another volume against Mary Wollstonecraft text, but Mary never wrote another volume of her text for women, and reason could be that she even died a few years after her marriage, as during the birth of her child Mary Shelley, who was later become wife of P.B. Shelley, Percy Bysshe Shelley. And these things are important in case of Mary Wollstonecraft and her text, A Vindication of Right of Women. The second text that we ignored is Charles and Mary Lamb's Tales from Shakespeare. This text published in the year 1807. It is retelling of William Shakespeare's play. It includes 20 plays of William Shakespeare. Out of those 20 texts or plays, 14 are told by Mary and 6 by Charles. And among it, comedies were the subject of Mary and tragedies are of Charles, whereas histories are excluded from this text. Overall, 20 plays were there, 6 by Charles and 14 by Mary, and thus the title comes Tales from Shakespeare by Mary and Charles Lamb. And this way, this text is ignored several times. Questions are coming from it, but students commit a mistake by ignoring this text. Hence, to secure good marks, we have to look upon it, and hence its value is even more as compared to other things. And another important point or text that we ignore is of Frankenstein, which is written by Mary Shelley. This Mary Shelley was none other than the daughter of Mary Wollstonecraft, who died during her birth. So Mary Shelley is having a family tradition of poet and artist, and we can find it in this one. Frankenstein is a novel, Gothic novel that published in the year 1880. Its subtitle that we often ignored is The Modern Prometheus. Thus the full title is Frankenstein, The Modern Prometheus. Its hero is Victor Frankenstein, and we all aware about the story that a Gothic person invented a person who is equivalent to Dracula or something, although he is a machine made man or a human made him, but that is another aspect. But the most focus remain on title, subtitle, year of publication, and who is hero. These are the things that we often ignored. This novel is having Gothic structure and we can often compare it with Anne Radcliffe Mysteries of Udolpho and Castle of Otranto, that is by another novelist, and these novels should also be read along with it. And although it is even before that of French Revolution, but I am counting it especially the ending of both the novels, hero heroine settings and the place where their castle was and so on. These are other important things. Students often ignore them, and hence when in the exam they find this question, they repent. Apart from the text, either it is Edmund Burke, Thomas Paine, Mary Shelley, Charles and Mary Lamb, and Mary Wollstonecraft, there are some events which are not taken account of by the students, and these are Reform Act of 1832. This Reform Act is most important. Several times question comes how to read, what were the reforms and are given, and another what are Reform Act called, like People's Act or the First Reform Act or General Act. These are the names given to it, and from it they get several other rights like common people, workers are given several rights, like right to go to strike and so on. So these things, there are general instruction we are having. And the next year, very next year, 1832, British Parliament passed Slavery Abolition Act. This act is very important. Several time question asked from this act. Although slavery is also banned in England and some other part in the year 1805, somewhere around 28 years earlier than the than this bill, but it does not other it doesn't mean that this act was not important, as it abolished slavery in the other colonies including India. So importance of this act is even more. Although slavery was banned earlier, but that was not in all way around, hence its value is more, and student often ignore it. Apart from it, there are tractarian movement of poets which we ignored. And a bit later in Victorian era, there was the right for the rights of women. The movement started, suffrage movement, that is also ignored. And then a bit later we are having Oxford movement, and arts for art's sake is also there. But instead of that, we focus more on general writer, Wordsworth, Keats, Shelley, and others. There is also another famous novelist, Walter Scott. Although Romantic era is popularly known for poetry, there is less prose and drama are even negative in sense, you could say. But there are some poetic dramas were written that does not mean for stage, but yeah, there were. But Walter Scott, one must read, and his famous novel was Ivanhoe, and this novel is also popular as a part of history. This very novel published in the year 1819, somewhere just 2 years before death of John Keats. And these are few important things we have to remember when we are going to read timeline between French Revolution and accession of Queen Victoria, or you can say 1879 to 1837. Although we should also focus on few things like Boston Tea Party when it took place 1860s, America's Declaration of Independence, and when the Constitution of America was discussed and signed. And similarly the 1860 Boston Tea Party, 75 somewhere around American independence, 83 Constitution, 88, that is 1 year before French Revolution, that was signed. And in this way, these years are more important, but students often ignore. And Rousseau's important phrase, equality, fraternity, and brotherhood, from which work it is. And Rousseau's social contract is another important thing that we have to remember. Mostly when we are reading these texts, especially between 1879 to 1837, we have to focus more on their title, subtitle, and year of publication. If possible, main character. These are frequently asked. Subtitle is a thing that they will ask, but we focus more on the main title, not the subtitle. Hence, issue become more complex for us. Sometime the novel that we have, Castle of Otranto, its ending is asked at least 2 or 3 times in last 20 years. And the main character, setting of the novel, which place, which castle, in which area, these points make this time period more important. The mistake common students do is that they focus on important writer, and these are considered mostly the minor writers. And when something is minor, we do not focus on it, and hence these become hard for us to decode them. Hence it is very important to look upon those texts which are inferior and are not popular, but they are part of literature, and these things make us more strong. To get good marks in exam is the only thing, and we can do it when we think in other way than the common students. Common student will focus on few things. They will read William Wordsworth and Coleridge, the lyrical ballads. They will have all knowledge of it, but not the other writers. And even in case of lyrical ballad, they will not study how many poems were in lyrical ballads, how many are written by Wordsworth and how many by Coleridge. How in There are four lyrical ballads. In how many lyrical ballads Coleridge contribute? How many poems of Coleridge were in the version 1800, 1804, or might and next perhaps 1806? How many were of Coleridge? And they will not check it. Which was the first poem of lyrical ballad and which was the last poem of lyrical ballad? So these things we have to remember when we are reading the timeline between 1789 to 1837. It is important. Yeah, it is important. Another women novelist that student often note to check is Jane Austen, her six novels, and these are most important. Sometimes the very opening of Pride and Prejudice is asked. It is truth universally acknowledged, but no one take care of it. If we want to score good marks, need of the day is to read them, check them, highlight them, and this is my aim, to introduce students their mistakes so that they could improve it. This is for today. In the next lecture we will meet with some other interesting topic and check and help students to gain more marks. With this, thank you, take care.